We will start with Michigan State first. Mark my words, change is coming. That is what new interim president and former Michigan Governor John Engler had to say this week when he took over the post at MSU. But for some faculty, Nassar victims, and students, John Engler is not the right person to lead with transparency. There are questions about his relationships with the Attorney General, who is supposed to be investigating MSU, but who Engler just endorsed for governor, and how he'll work with advisor and former governor Jim Blanchard. Also this week, Governor Snyder says he can't oust the MSU Board of Trustees, and the number of women abused by Nassar has grown to 265. There's more victim impact statements this week for Nassar's assault sentencing in 3 different cases. Add to that MSU's bond rating in question and MSU's top coaches under fire for other sexual abuse cases. And you have a university in crisis that needs transparency and accountability. Will Engler bring that? Let's bring in our MiWeek contributor, Stephen Henderson, host of Detroit Today on WDET Public Radio. Nolan Finley is off, and Daniel Howes, columnist with the Detroit News, is here. Daniel, welcome back. It's good to have you here at the table.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we were just figuring out, it was about a week ago that Luanna Simon resigned from MSU, and the entire news cycle and the details and the story that keeps changing around this university has been just staggering this week.
Stunning.
I mean, it's been fascinating to see, and for both of you also to cover. You know, I want to start first, and I know, Daniel, you wrote a column about is Engler the right one in this case, but I think before we can even dissect if Engler is the right man to lead MSU at this time, I want to ask both of you, let's kind of look back when Engler was the governor here in the state for 3 terms and the kind of leadership style he had, and you know, I think the skull-cracking reputation he had in Lansing for getting things done. I'm going to start with you first on this, Daniel.
Oh, I think they need a skullcracker. I don't know that they need that skullcracker. I think that's the issue, and was one of the issues in my column. Look, what I think this move signifies is a return of the old guard. These are people that know the power networks very well. They're very comfortable in them. They know all the players. The players know them. If you start to look at the Board of Trustees, they've been in and out of that boardroom for decades. I mean, you've got one person that's been there for 32 years. You got another one who was first appointed in 1991 by John Engler, by the way, who left the board, came back, left again, came back. It's a club, and I don't know that entrusting radical institutional change to a member of the club is where it is going to deliver the kind of change that this institution, I think, sorely needs.
Would you describe him as a member of the club, and was this a bad move to appoint him as the interim president?
He's definitely a member of the club that has run MSU for decades. And yes, he is a skullcracker, but he's a political skullcracker, which means really he's a negotiator, a deal maker. And he was a deal maker with a very heavy hand. When he was in Lansing, both in the legislature and as governor.
But don't you need a deal maker in this situation?
I don't think
no?
so. I think I think what you needed was a strong academic leader to refocus the university's mission on what it should be, and that's one of the big problems at East Lansing, I think, with that board, is that it is not respectful of the place that academics should have over athletics, over politics. I think you needed a strong leader who was going to stop the excuse making for you know, what happened, own up to it, and lead the university to a place of healing. But I don't know that a politician is the right fit for that.
Well, look, you need somebody that's not beholden to these interests.
That's
right.
The
example I used in my most recent column on this was Kevin Orr, who was brought in. He was a Washington bankruptcy lawyer. His only association with the state of Michigan was that he graduated from Michigan Law School 30 years prior. He did know a couple people who were in positions of leadership, but he didn't have those relationships. And he could go in and say, look, I'm hired to do a job. I'm hired to assess the strengths and weaknesses here, and I have to make decisions, some of which are going to be unpopular.
You know, some people would argue, though, that having relationships and having strong relationships can actually help move something forward, that you can actually get more done if you kind of know the players. But you say in this circumstance, that shouldn't be the case.
Well, in this circumstance, what that begets is unpredictability. If you are a member of the board, or if you're a member of the hierarchy university, or the athletic department, or whatever the case may be, you can bring somebody in from the outside that's much more unpredictable in terms of how that's going to affect you potentially.
I think one of the things that struck me was when John Engler was saying that I think we've moved past the point where we can talk about ousting the Board of Trustees. I mean, they're good, they're in place, and I'm not sure that conversation was really over yet. You know, in the Nassar case, if you step back and you look at the USA Board of Gymnastics, that entire board resigned.
Right.
But it looks like in this case, after people really questioning the board's decisions here, that they're going to be staying in place.
Well, and you've got what's his role in that? I mean, this is part of the problem, right? He's acting as though he's the governor, the loudest political voice in the state, saying, hey, I think we're past that point. In truth, he now works for that board. It's not up to him to decide whether they should go or stay. It's actually up to the current governor, who says he can't do anything about it, and it's up to the alumni base at the university, I think, to try to push for elective change on that board.
It's important to say here that the boards of Michigan's big three universities are elected by statewide at-large ballots. It's the only state in the country,
ballots, right?
the only state in the country that does that for their flagship universities. Not another state in the country does it. Now, you talk to people, as I've floated this idea, and say, oh yeah, you know, we're more accountable to the people. Well, no, you're not. You're elected for an 8-year term, and then you have something like this happen, and you say, well, we can't be removed. Governor can't. Well, who can remove you? Nobody. If we don't remove ourselves, we can't be removed. And I think there's a real problem with that. There is no accountability. Once you're on the board, you're on the board.
And I think it's interesting, too, that sometimes if people are voting for this, they just skip that entire block, or they say, oh, I don't even know who half these people are.
I vote Democrat, I vote for Democrats, or I vote Republicans.
It tends to go with the straight ticket vote. If that's higher on the Democratic side, that's who wins.
Tell me, what is the impact going to be if we have a no confidence vote from the faculty about the appointment of John Engler, Daniel?
You know, that's a great point. I'm not sure. I suspect it would, with John Engler, it would have no impact, and he would just continue to do what he's going to do. I don't think the story for the board is over yet. I think the pressure is going to continue to increase. There's going to be an open meeting, I think, a town hall meeting with the board either tonight or tomorrow. That's going to, I'm sure, be quite a spectacle. The New York Times just called for the resignation of the entire board. The Detroit News has already called for the resignation of the entire board. You almost get a sense with some of these board members that they really don't get it. Yeah. They don't understand that their job is governance and oversight of the administration, and when the administration failed, they failed.
And I do want to point out that it was like about 5 days before Lou Anna Simon resigned that the board said we gave her our full confidence. Yeah. It was just 5 days before that.
And this no confidence vote, I agree, it won't have much effect on Engler. It will have an effect on the university. That is a very serious academic reaction.
Right.
To what's going on.
So you're saying that this is going to affect what kind of professors they can hire in the future,
Sure.
what kind of research money that they can get coming at this university?
Absolutely. I mean, Lou Anna Simon has spent a really long time, and let's put the Nassar thing aside just sort of gently for a second. The work that she did to enhance the academic reputation, the academic rigor of many programs at MSU is one of the other things that's at stake here. And if the faculty have a vote of no confidence in John Engler, it's a sign that they don't believe that academic growing up, I guess, that you could say that's gone on in East Lansing is going to be sustained.
And that would signify a major cleavage in that university.
Yeah, it would.
Probably one of the worst you can imagine. In a lot of ways, more so than some kind of rebellion by the students. If you have the faculty who say, we have no confidence in the administration or in the governance of this university, I mean, that could be a precipitating event for the board, potentially.
And you take a look at what that could mean for a university and for university's growth 10, 15 years down the road. Let me read you something, and I want to see if you have the same reaction I did. One of John Engler's statements yesterday when we talk about transparency and accountability. This is what he said, and excuse the fact that my eyesight is just going these days. This will not be a process played out through the media on a daily basis, but mark my words, change is coming. We will make announcements as warranted, and will keep the public informed as appropriate. That kind of struck me a little bit of, especially since the role the media, I think, has played in exposing.
Without the media, we don't know about any of it.
We don't know about this.
But John Engler saying, now, you're not going to be hearing about this every day, and we'll let you know when you need to know something.
Let me tell you something. John Engler has not been a politician in how long, Stephen?
15 years.
Okay. The world has changed. Yeah. Okay, you cannot control information like that. And already the university has shown that their idea of transparency isn't what most other people's are. I mean, look, they made the decision on John Engler a day and a half privately before they actually had the public vote and said he's the guy. I mean, why do you think the media knew about it a day before? Because they had sources who already tell them it's a done deal.
Well, this to me does not say that we want to make sure that you know every step of the
process.
No,
it doesn't.
It's saying, hey, don't worry yourself
we'll
about
tell
it.
you
We're
what
going
you
to tell
need to
you
know.
what
It's
you need to
implicitly
know.
saying that transparency or lack of transparency wasn't one of the dynamics that led to this in the first place, which we all know is untrue. We all know that that was one of the big problems.
So there's 20 red flags there. Let me ask you this, because this has also got me to thinking a little bit about, should universities be the places to be handling a lot of these sexual assault, conversations? If you say, well, maybe the university shouldn't be looking to litigate or to protect over, sexual conduct, sexual harassment, sexual assault, that maybe it's the police departments. But then you look at Meridian Township and you see in the Nassar case, that police report that came out that a young woman did go to the police.
Yeah.
And they went to the alleged perpetrator and he said, oh, that's legitimate. And they said, well, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I'm not sure that law enforcement was any better here than the university. I do think there are legitimate questions about universities' ability to investigate and deal with criminal matters in a way that makes a lot of sense. And that's not just in sexual assault cases. That's with a lot of things that go on campus.
It's also a question of independence. And if, can the university independently have people who independently investigate these allegations that maybe implicate a major sports team?
Right. Right.
What is the kind of pushback that comes institutionally? Can you really do that? It's like, if you watch your cop shows and you see internal affairs, who are the most hated cops in any police department? The internal affairs people, right? Well, that's kind of what you're talking about here.
Let me ask you about this, since you brought up some of the other major sports. We've had Mark D'Antonio and Tom Izzo, of course, that have had to answer a lot of questions as well. And where do you see their role in almost kind of being de facto spokesman for the university, or being those men that people want to hear from, during this entire crisis? And where do you see kind of their role playing out, especially as people are really following Michigan State basketball and the run that the team is making? It all seems a little convoluted.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there are legitimate questions that both D'Antonio and Izzo have to answer. I think
from the ESPN report.
Yeah, I think D'Antonio's done a better job so far of being upfront and answering those than Izzo has. He's still being a little cagey. I think more to the point, they fit into this larger narrative of the role that sports and politics plays in East Lansing and who governs that university, who's in charge.
Is East Lansing different, though, from other big universities?
I think it's different from the other university down the road in this state.
So you're saying that U of M does not operate in this way?
I don't think it operates the same way. That's not to say there aren't problems with governance.
Its board is also just as politicized.
Right. I mean, they're all governed by the same process. I think it plays out differently in Ann Arbor than it has in East Lansing for many decades.
Their board has also gotten in a little bit of trouble. There's been pushback about closed meetings, that they want the meetings more open.
The transparency thing is universal. Wayne State, Michigan, and Michigan State all flout this Open Meetings Act, and they have the courts on their side, by the way.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of litigation on behalf of newspapers trying to change that. The courts have said they are an independent branch of government, cannot be subject to Open Meetings Act the way everyone else is.
Do you think, Daniel, sports and politics is playing out at Michigan State differently than it does at other major universities, the point that Stephen was trying to make?
To other major universities in the state or around the country, I'm sure that you would see this kind of thing happen in a place like Alabama. You might have, there's a lot of different places you could see it play out. But I do think the way in which these board members are elected is unique and makes them in a lot of ways more untouchable and more, frankly, rankly partisan. And I think we've seen that this week.
Okay, I know that I can't ask you to predict what's going to be happening in the next week or what we're going to be talking about in terms of Michigan State in the next week. But what do you see kind of the biggest questions going forward? I'm going to start with you, Stephen, first. In terms of, all right, you like it or not, John Engler is the interim president of Michigan State University.
I mean, I think one real early test for him is how he can build confidence among constituencies where he doesn't have it. Students, faculty, that's going to matter. I mean, it's really going to make a difference in terms of how effective he can be. I also think for the board, the question is how quickly do you turn to the process of saying, how long is interim, right? Is this someone you're going to have for a year? Is this someone you're going to have for a couple of months while you go out and find someone else? That's an important question, because the longer I think you leave him in that position, the more damage you do to the academic reputation of that university.
And I think that's going to make it even harder for them to recruit top flight talent.
Sure.
From a university like that. A university like Michigan State should have sitting presidents waiting, queuing up to get that
And
job.
we don't know that they don't. It's just that here they've gone another direction.
Well, they
Would
haven't.
you want to queue up and get that job now?
But they have. Listen, the last time, my understanding, the last time when Michigan got their last president, they didn't have a single sitting president who was a finalist.
Yeah.
They ended up hiring a provost who,
right.
who in his first presidential job, who by his own admission had no experience with athletics, and he learned the hard way.
Yeah.
But I think the longer this goes on, to his point, you have problems with constituencies. I think it makes it harder to sell the university. It just becomes a snowball effect.
And I think it's going to be interesting where that snowball effect goes. Again, you're hearing the victim impact statements this week from another 60 plus, 65 women in the different Nassar sexual assault case, and we'll see where it leads from there.